Welcome back to the channel. I want to show you guys how to fix laggy playback in your Resolve sessions. So first thing you can do when you're getting some laggy playback is go to the playback menu and change your timeline playback resolution. So if we look at the image here, right now it's on full. I'll switch it to quarter. You can see it's de-sharpens it a little bit and it's not as nice looking, but if you're just working on your timing of your cut, you don't necessarily need the high quality preview image. And this also changes your preview monitor here, and if you have a clean video feed on, it'll reduce the output of that as well. Second thing you can do is work on your render cache. So if we look at this clip right here, we got a blue line above it. That's because I have this Fusion clip here. So with the Fusion clip, it needs to render that for it to play back in real time. And if you make any changes, it has to recache that. So under playback, we have this render cache. The options are none, where it won't cache it whatsoever. Smart, which caches it whenever you're idle in your system. So if you're not physically playing or making adjustments, it'll start working on that in the background. And then you have user, which creates a new project directory and caches everything into a database for the project. So if we took it off or we make an adjustment, let's change the timing on this one here. Now you can see that blue line goes away, and that will show that it's rendering in the background. So I'll go from none here back to smart. That's going to trigger it. And now it sees, okay, this isn't pre-rendered anymore. And then it will make a blue line and start working through that cache. Now this can add up over time. So if you go under playback, you now have delete render cache and manage render cache. So delete render cache, you could delete everything in the project that's cached, but then that kind of disables your project because some of the assets you're working with are just going to be needing to cache again. You have unused, so if you had multiple clips or versions of assets that you aren't actually using, it'll get rid of those for you. Or you can have selected clips. Now that builds up over time, so you're going to have to manage that under manage render cache. This gives you this pop-up menu. And you can sort it by render cache right here with this drop-down menu. Now, I wouldn't recommend removing the cache on projects you're working on because it'll just have to recache whenever you revisit those projects. But if it's an older project, you can select them and clear the selected cache, and that can help out. And you should probably do that periodically anyway. Next thing you can do is change your media to work with Resolve a little bit better. So if we click on this clip here, it's highlighted in my media bin. You can right-click that. You can choose Generate Optimized Media, and that'll make a new codec version of whatever you've chosen to work best with your project. Or you can generate proxy media, and that'll make a lower quality file that plays back a lot better. And then you can choose to point to that during the edit process, and then go back to your full resolution clips when you're ready to output your final. So this is underneath Preference. We go Shift 9, or if you hit the gear at the bottom right. Under your master settings for your projects, we have optimized media and render cache, and this is where you can choose your codec and also choose where your media is going. So you can choose a directory in there. So let's go ahead and add that now. I'll right click this and I'll say generate proxy media. It's going to pop up. Right now, I'll just throw it on this external drive. It'll generate that. Okay, so now we've generated a proxy for that file. And if I go to the upper right here, I can choose prefer proxies. And you'll see we get a little pink icon on all of our assets as well as the media inside the media pool. And so this will play back much smoother compared to maybe a codec or a camera file that has a little bit harder time playing back at full speed in Resolve. So that's another thing you can do is make your proxies, render your cache. And here's one other thing I do with Fusion compositions. This one I need to swap out all the time, but I have another Fusion comp at the end here. You can see it's like the same layout, but what I did was render that in place. If you click the Fusion composition and right click, you have a render in place option, and it'll allow you to name the clip and choose the codec and include Fusion comp and any grading effects. And then that makes a new render that doesn't have to be dependent on this render cache. So then I can just play this back as a regular MOV file, and it plays back smoothly without having to do any render caching within the Fusion. So those are some tips to get laggy playback to work in Resolve. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys on the next one.